9 on Wednesday the 20th, whatever it is. 22nd. We're really on the ball here. I am Greg Seaborn, acting chairman of this committee. The committee consists of Councilman Bob Arconti, Councilman Joe Cavo, Councilman Tommy Sadi, and Councilman Dwayne Perkins. However, Mr. Perkins could not make it because of a conflict. Also in attendance, ex officio members, and help me if I screw this up, guys. Colleen Stanley, Councilwoman Mary Teicholz, Councilman Paul Rottello, Ben Gianisi. Let's see, anybody else in the council? And then we have Town Clerk Lori Payback. We have Assistant Director of Finance Dan Garrett. Paul Esteban, Airport Administrator, Bob Yannon, Corporation Counsel, Sean Harity, Director of Permits, and Amy Walsh St. Hilaire, Director of Finance. Did I miss Mark Hascarl, Library Director? Did I miss anybody else? Okay, Dennis Helpman. I missed. I said Dennis. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is what I'm going to do. What did I miss?
Dennis Helpman.
I just said that.
Oh, we did? Okay.
That was the last one I did. We're going to do this a little bit differently than the rest of the committees have done so, because I think it's relatively a given, sitting through some of the other committee meetings, those of us who did that the mayor and Dave St. Hilaire and all the departments have cut it back down to allowing just as much as they possibly can. And so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to go through the different departments just as the list as we do every year. Basically, I'll ask David to just give a quick emphasis on the word quick. David, overview of that. Certainly, committee members and council members, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. But we're going to go this as expeditiously as I can do so. That said, we're going to start in the Common Council, which begins on page 68. And I would ask Dave if you want to throw some information on that.
Okay. County Council, there's a rather sizable reduction from 1 year from this year's budget to last year's budget. Most notably in part-time salaries, from 18,000 down to 12,000. We looked at your trends. Last year was a little bit high, but there's been, I think your use of part-time has been down, and Gene can address that a little bit if you want to, but basically we haven't had a need for part-time as much as we have in the past.
Can I just clarify that? We have had a need for part-time, but I've been fortunate to have volunteers through the SAVE program to help us out.
And thank you for clarifying that, yes. That's the large part of it, and we took out some nickels and dimes and helped, other places. And that's about it for that. Any questions on that?
I want to make sure that it's a accepted policy that at the conclusion of the budgetary process here, that we still do our pizza at the end of the acceptance of such things, so that's on there.
Well, pizza's in there.
It's coming back on, I got to tell you.
Pizza's in there.
All right.
Maybe one less coffee or two, but it's in there.
Yeah. Mr. Scotto.
If I could just also say that I know that Gene and I have been trying to make an effort to reduce our publications and our legal notices, trying to combine more public hearings together. Maybe things get stretched out a little bit longer, but we're trying to do our part to save some money there and not running public hearings every month and having to put that in the paper under public notice and pay the fees to the newspapers that we do. So it's been an effort, and I know Gene has been making great strides and efforts in reducing our paper output from the office. So it's been helpful.
One, I think, Mr. Chairman, I want to add for the budget, $1,800. Right, Jim?
Year 18, 17 something.
Notice for the budget, $1,800.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Through the chair to Mr. St. Hilaire, and we could just explain the difference between overtime salaries and part-time salaries on the Common Council budget.
Sure. There's certain overtime that may be incurred by full-time people for nighttime meetings and all that kind of thing. And see that right sitting right at the table right in front of you. That's a full-time person sitting there. And you know, that's what you might incur overtime cost for.
What about the part-time salaries for the chair?
Part-time salaries of the people that help in the office upstairs. They said that's been supplemented quite a bit through volunteer help, managed through Gene.
You know, if I could just extrapolate that a little bit, Mr. Sally, the overtime is paid for, say, Don Stasny, who is doing is a full-time city employee, and she's doing our minutes and our council meetings. A part-timer doesn't get overtime, so that's why we carry an overtime line item.
So just to be clear for the chair, so part-time salaries are for the support staff that are coming into companies that are not otherwise full-time municipal staff.
That's correct.
And investigate who determines whether or not you're going to have someone from the city do overtime or someone's going to be hired part-time with regard to these line items.
Many times it's due to who's available, but generally we always try to keep Dot for the big council meetings, since she has a lot of experience doing the minutes for the council meetings, make sure the motions are done correctly, etc. And then for the ad hoc meetings, we try to backfill those with part-timers, since it's cheaper to. Less expensive. It's less expensive to go to the ad hoc.
She wasn't aware of that. She is now. My bad.
Also, again, the common council, through the chair, office equipment, $3,000, no expenditures, then proposed $1,500 and allocated proposed $1,500. What is that for?
Just in case you need a new printer or a new computer system, and that's to your discretion if you want to cut it out of there, by all means. But there's always a certain, you didn't purchase anything this year that was proposed last year, and last year the idea was that it was going to be part of a sound system. And this year, there may be needs for repairs to that sound system or other kind of office type of equipment.
If I can interject, I will tell you that the copier goes on the fritz quite often because of the amount of load that it has on it. The impressions it runs every month are incredible. So.
And some of those costs, if they're not able to afford it in these budgets, they are paid through city clerks. Budget as well. So.
And Mr. Chair, that's the purpose of some of these questions, to understand the distinction of dollars and who allocates those dollars, the council or the clerk's office, not only for the current time, but in a couple of years, we presumably are looking at changing that office to an appointed position, trying to get a grasp on how those dollars are allocated. So I'll have some other questions in the city clerk's budget. Thank you.
Okay, so Dave, we're all set with the printing and the ordinance as well.
If I may expand upon the legal and publications, as she is going through that, I'm not sure here right now, but she's not just looking for savings in the common council area, we're kind of looking at it citywide. So it's a conversation that's kind of being done at a much higher level, because it impacts several departments. Okay, so.
Through the chair, our office is running with her on that.
Absolutely.
We're running up against legal limitations, as you know, David.
Yes.
In terms of what we can cut.
It's about $90,000 across the citywide, and it's one of these things. If you look at, and I'll use this as an example, if you saw the ad in the paper, it was pretty much spaced out like this, $1,800. And that's pretty spacious for an ad. It probably didn't need to be spaced out quite that much on 3/4 of a page ad. So there's probably more affordable ways of.
Legislature's looking at that issue right now. They're talking about allowing a local option to go online with most of your notices, including zoning notices. So that was a significant amount.
Any further questions on that? Okay, let's go down to the mayor's office, which is page 70.
Okay. In the it's pretty flat budget. There's not a whole lot of changes. There is a drop of about $1,000 overall from year to year. There's no salary increase for the mayor proposed for next year at the mayor's request. And there's a drop in postage of a couple $1,000s. A big thing, though, although there seems to be a level budget or a slight drop, he's absorbing about $7,200, which is a rather significant amount, for the community access TV, which is the Danbury TV amount. That's done, if you want to expand
We've
upon
just
that.
been duct taping money from my budget, IT department, scraping dollars wherever we could to pay for we have one volunteer, John Newmeyer, does a really nice job, but he's also augmented by part-timers, high school students and some college students. Last year, the Weedo kids were, they're not men, but the Weedo men were running the machines. So that's really what we use that for. But there's also a lot of technology infrastructure money. We're constantly working on the sound. As you know, it's been a struggle. We have very old wiring within the building, so we have boosters on there and amplifiers. It's still not real. I'm not really happy with it yet still, but to rewire the building, it's a much significant expense in the $30,000 to $40,000 range. So it's something we just have to defer right now. But ultimately, the building needs to be rewired to carry the signal correctly. So that's where we run up a lot of money on that. Frankly, service and support of the equipment, the audio-visual equipment, and some part-time salaries.
Any questions on that?
Excuse me, we'll go to the mayor's office, everybody? Mayor report. Page 71.
On the annual report, dropped from a budget last year from 11,000 down to 10,000 this year. Slight drop. All right. It puts us right on par with our 6/30/08 actuals. Any questions? Mayor's discretionary fund. All right. There's a fair amount of decrease in there from last year. The actuals of 630. Proposed budget was about the same amount, 18,000. The drop down to about 12.5. That's the mayor's discretionary spending area for people that come in asking for additional grants and money and that kind of thing. We during our meeting last night, we talked about some of that additional money from the Veterans Association for the flags. The flags, about $2,100. Well, that's where it used to come out of from here, from the contribution grants. Well, that was moved into that account, and a significant cut in addition to that. So from 18,000 down to 12,500. Memberships, city memberships, most of the organizations have remained flat, and some organizations have actually cut. In this year's budget, we actually budgeted for about a 3.5% increase. They held the line to the 6/30/08 amount. So that's why you see a drop in from this year's budget, more in line with the 6/30/08 actuals.
Mr. Cheney.
Thank you, through the chair. At my budget meeting, Councilwoman Stanley brought this up to the Little League.
Oh, yeah.
Was it the 6,000 or 3,000?
3,000.
3,000, that it was not budgeted through the Parks and Rec budget. Would that be funded through the mayor's discretionary fund here? It doesn't seem high enough.
I thought they said that it was going to be funded through that.
That he didn't have enough money for his. That $3,000
I know we'll find it.
First part of it, I'm sorry.
Just want to make sure it's in there.
$3,000 for the
It may not be
woman.
specifically earmarked in next budget, but we always run a little bit excess in there. We'll cover the Cal Ripken, right? There was not a conscious effort to cut that out of next budget.
That's what I'm saying.
He's going to have to fund it internally, but we'll move money around.
But it would be through his department.
Yeah, he does. Every budget has a little bit that they can pull from, but it's very little, very, very little. And it just means that we would have to reprioritize, quite frankly. And Nick's got a little bit of area that he can reprioritize in there. All right. Very, 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 very little bit. There's no one line that is, I would say, is you can say that there's any fat in there. But if we had to pull that money out, then we'll say, okay, what can you defer or do without? And I'm sure you can find a way to do it.
He usually ends up having a vacancy or two in his part-time help. That'll accrue, and then we'll use that money to provide a grant.
It's gonna bring a lot of business downtown anyway.
Yeah, right,
Yeah, it
they
is.
do a great job.
No, it's gonna bring a lot of activity downtown.
Well, this is the championship
This is
game.
a regional,
Oh, right.
and it's over a week's period. They'll be staying in our hotels. It's gonna bring a lot of income,
You can
some
always take,
income.
I hate to spend discretionary before we approve the budget, but we could always take it out of,
No, it's gonna bring income to Danbury, so.
When is it scheduled?
I'm not sure.
It's that, no, it's,
May?
it's July.
Oh, July 1st? And they're not May games, they're almost. Oh, Saturday.
Yeah. We'll find it.
But I think it's July.
We'll find it.
It's the first week in July.
I'll talk to Nick about that.
Okay, with memberships, folks? All right, city clerk's office? None here.
Okay, city clerk's office. City clerk's office there's not much in there to begin with, but it is lower than it was last year. Gene has done a tremendous job in really tightening up things. And there's a budget amount of salary increase that, as we discussed last night, the 1.5 or 1.7, I'm not sure, I can't remember what we discussed last night. 1.75, there was 1.5, what did we end up with last night?
1.75 for
Oh, nine.
09, and then 1.5, 1.5.
Okay.
For 010.
Oh, 10.
Right, and just so we're clear, the 1.75 is calculated on the first day of the new term.
This is December 1st, right?
Right, and 4 months later.
Right.
Or May 5th. May 1st.
May 1st will be an additional 1 point, some of the communities got.
Right.
And then July 1st, 1.7. Just want to make sure we're clear about the process. That'll require a motion for year 2. Year 1 is already budgeted, it will require a motion for year 2.
We have to just make a motion for the 010 or 11 year for 3%, 1.5 on July, January 1st, and 1.5 July.
1.5 July 1st,
July
2011.
1st.
And then
Excuse me,
January 1st.
right, 1.5 January 1st, 2011.
So that's in there. And there's really there's a significant reduction in office supplies. Basically, we looked at the average that's been going on over the last couple of years, and then Gene basically took it on the chin for the other amount. Gene is been very efficient in that regard. So, as you can see, she hasn't really. She was able to get some credits this year. That's why you see a minus 45 on some of the other stuff. So. Any questions on this?
Mr. Side.
Through the chair and then Mr. Sanhilaire or to the city clerk. Most of the, if I'm correct, most of the actual production of materials, duplicating, and those costs and supplies are actually under the common council budget. Is that correct?
Yeah, that in large part, yes, because it's kind of, if you're printing your books and all that other kind of stuff, yeah.
And do you know approximately how much it costs annually to print, bind the common council budget? I mean, not the budget, but the agenda itself over the year. What allocation for cost goes to that? I mean, maybe I should have asked it under council, but I think the clerk actually has a better handle on that than the members of the council would.
Yeah,
Mostly paper. Paper costs. and printing and printing.
Yeah, because you own your own machine up there. You own your own machine up there. And so it
No,
comes
we
out.
lease one from council. I own my own machine.
You own your the other things.
The machine from council, so it's hard. Some things are done through my machine, some things are done through that, but the ink is expensive, but I've never broken it down. I mean, we're using about 6,000 sheets of paper per month. How much does that relate to? Ink, I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
So segueing back and forth between the council budget and the clerk's office, with regard to overtime and part-time staff, through the chair, both either to the city clerk, either the director of finance, or to the council president, who ends up deciding in the end who is the individual or individuals that will cover meetings? I know there's volunteers sometimes if they're full-time staffers, but who makes the allocation and decides who's going to cover what meetings and
She schedules our meetings, when we need to reserve a room, or such as this room. We give call, and she'll schedule and make sure that we have the appropriate person here. That doesn't get paid enough, as we know now. But she makes sure that's appropriately staffed.
And just, again, going back to the issue of potential changing of the way this is all done in the future, has anybody thought of, we're looking at long-term costs and how the city can save, what it's going to cost to staff the council? From the standpoint of the council budget and the city clerk's office segueing into a potential charter change, has there been any projections on that as we start to formulate budgets 1, 2, and 3 years out?
One of the things we'll have to do, Mr. Chairman, is we're going to have to score the position appropriately so that it fits in with our civil service regs, and so salary-wise, it's going to be very similar to what the current city clerk makes. The difference you'll see will be overtime costs covering night meetings. I would think that the clerk of the council would now be responsible for covering overnight meetings, but then they would be paid overtime to do that, versus hiring a bunch of part-timers to try to keep some continuity into the meeting coverage. Now, that won't always be the case, so you're going to have at least one sort of part-timer that'll be able to cover vacations, time away, family events, things like that. So, but we'll have to look at how we structure that a little bit. A little bit premature until the charter passes, although I think we do plan on putting that on the agenda.
Thank you.
I think it'd be basically coverage for an entire office at that point, which you're supplementing with part-time and all that, because you are looking at it a little differently. And in that case, you would probably be a little bit more specific about putting in codes for into the copier about for this department versus that department, what you can do.
Well, the reason I asked these questions, the mayor touched on the issue of continuity and coverage rather than an individual sort of, cherry picking and different people covering different meetings, as opposed to having a continuity of an office where a full-timer covers these things and is supplemented when necessary by part-timers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Anybody have any further questions for city clerk? All right, excuse me, Jeannie. Before we go out of the city clerk's office, I just wanted to bring something up. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that you send those emails for the meetings, because it's in my computer the whole week because I got no memory left. And if I didn't have that, I'd be lost. So it's just that.
You're welcome.
You really think you are? Okay, so here we go from the city clerk's office to the probate clerk. If you would, Dave.
Yep. Probate has dropped slightly. It's again related to some printing binding. There's not a whole lot to that. Any questions? The office equipment dropped a little bit. Much of their stuff is pretty much required.
Any questions on probate, folks? Okay. Then to registrars, which is on 77.
Yep.
Registrars and elections, if you would.
All right. They have dropped a fair amount, in large part, from the part-time salaries. You know, we had a big election last year, or in this budget year, to all the presidential election and all that. We usually, staff up for that. You'll see that a drop due to that. And you also see some drops in communication services. They handle things a little bit differently in the way they communicate with their election workers. They did a pretty smart thing. They went out and bought the track phones that are now rechargeable, which was a kind of a one-time expense, and then they just buy the batteries. So now they don't have to incur their monthly charge. They just use them when they need them. And it's basically it saves a lot of money. So they're pretty smart in the way they handle that. And printing and binding. Again, they're being very selective on what they're doing and how they're doing it, and it shows. Outside services, some of that can be due to some of the storage of the voting machines. As you recall, we probably we were storing these machines in another location and paying a fee for that. Now the machines are much smaller. Can be stored, and I think most of them, if not all of them, are stored in the basement. And yeah, here. Yeah, that's a good idea. Plenty of room there. Right. So, police department. Right. I think we'll find out. No. Yeah. So, anyways. So if you look through, there's a lot of areas they really tightened up their budget, and I tell you that probably from a percent standpoint, they probably took the greatest hit, about 15%. Any questions? If you look at the bottom, I have a note here that there shouldn't be an increase as of January 1st, 2010. On this, I'm going to correct that because
I mean the salary account.
Yeah, I'm going to double check that. I have a note to myself here. There shouldn't be an increase in that. So I'll make a modification on that. And it's not going to, what I'll do is end up just shifting it to another supply line or something. Because I did tighten up probably.
We're not going to make a motion when it comes to the infrastructure.
For this little amount, I would never recommend it. I would just, if it's all right with this, if you need that discussion, I'll just simply move that small amount. If it turns out that, in fact, they should not get that increase in January 1st, 2010. Just to simply move it until their supply lines. And I'll talk to the registrars to see where they need it most.
I have a question, Dave. Down at the bottom for office equipment, actual 2007, 2008, $27,000. And now we're down to 3,000 for this year. What was the 27?
That's all your new.
All the machines.
A lot of the new machines.
That's like that. Any other questions, Mr. Rotello?
Thank you. Through the chair of the floor, because no one really is here from the Office of Registrar to answer it. Last year, I think it was the primary in February, we actually ran out of ballots. Normally these ballots are pre-printed someplace, I don't know where, some factory where they print ballots. So I believe we ran off a few. We printed it at City Hall or someplace. We printed it ourselves, and my assumption is the Secretary of State allows that to happen. Have we considered doing that in-house to save some money, if indeed it would even save some money? Does anybody have any information on that?
Well, I think that was a unique situation because of the new machines.
I think if you print them yourself, you're going to have a problem with the
You do have a legal issue with that.
Yeah, I don't know that
but there's...
well, we ran out of them, so...
Well, I think you could do that. That was my understanding.
Yeah.
But to print all the ballots in-house, I don't think it'll go through the scanner, read the scanner, because I think they have to be hand-counted if they're run off. But I could be wrong on that.
There's some issue with that, but I think for the first year with the new voting machines, there was actually there's some reimbursement with the state on that. And they were allowing us probably to do it to test the machines.
So from now on, we've got to buy them.
Yes.
Pre-done.
Yes.
Are they expensive?
they're not cheap. So,
So they're giving us the braziers and they're making it up on the blades, is that the deal?
right, but I can't tell you exactly how much they are. I'm sure the registers have that available. I just don't know. But it is, from what I understand, they're probably cheaper than the old ballots because they're thinner and they're they've got to be thinner because they got to run them into run them in and out. But
Good. Thanks.
Anything else, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, we're going then from Registrars and Elections Corporation Council, which is on 95.
Mr. Chair,
Sir.
do I have your permission? Is it the committee's permission to make that change? Should I?
For the Registrar's salary?
Right, if in fact they should not be getting an increase. Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
And here I have increase effective January 1st.
It's typographical error.
Right, but there's an amount down here that shows an increase. I'm just going to double check that, and if there's a number that needs to be changed, I'll just move it into a supply account rather than.
Yeah, the motion was for July 1. Or 09.
Oh no. All right. So
And then they don't get another raise.
the bottom line is there won't be any change in this. It's just a typographical. Okay.
The January 1 will be changed?
Yeah, it should be.
To July 1, 2009. Thank you. So the bottom line is okay. In each individual, it's okay. It's just that.
Okay, Dave?
I'm okay.
All right.
On
Corporation Council?
Thanks.
If you would, sir. Page 95?
I'll just do a quick overview and then I'll. Okay, the amended budget amount looks very high as compared to last year's actual, but if you recall, there's a request from Corporation Council related to NNE, a few months ago, and that's what pumped up the litigation account. The current year request is more reflective of what their normal year budget. In fact, it's actually lower than what their typical year budget is. Bob, you want to?
Sure, thank you. Through the chair, we've been drifting down in terms of our normal budget, if you will, putting aside what are in effect these offline major expenditures like M&E and also the transfer station project more recently. And we've been, at the direction of the mayor and at my direction, we've also been moving more and more functions in-house. For example, we just completed cell tower administrative litigation in-house through Les Pinter and Robin Edwards that normally would have gone to specialized counsel. We probably saved $50,000 to $75,000 by handling it in-house. They did a tremendous job. We're waiting for the results on that. That's a difficult venue for the citing council. Almost nobody ever prevails there, but if we don't, it will not be because of their efforts. We did the same thing with tax appeals this year. We retained tax appeals. We have approximately 30 tax appeals pending. We retain them in-house, also at my direction, in-house, and Les is generally handling those much, much longer than we normally would. And for the same reason, when you send things to outside counsel, your costs increase dramatically. So, we're paying Les his salary, and he's just working Saturday and half a Sunday on the tax appeals. But I do let him park in my law firm parking lot, so when he's at court handling, so that kind of makes up for it.
Okay.
Lastly, and we've talked about this in previous years, Diane Rosemark has been a tremendous asset. I estimate that, as most of you know, we have been sending pretty much everything to Saran Murray, and at her very high hourly rate, although she's probably worth it. We didn't have an HR attorney before Diane. Diane's probably costing us per hour, if you calculated it that way, probably 15% of Saran's hourly rate if you don't count benefits. So, that's also allowed us to cut our budget year over year for the last several years. So cumulatively, we cut about as much as we can cut, again without regard to major offline projects like M&E and the transfer station more recently.
If I may expand on that, in the meeting last night, we also talked about that. We see that in the labor negotiations account and also in the professional service account under personnel as well. Those charges that were increasing because of the costs that we're incurring using Saran, which we still use because it's it's a valuable resource that we have. There's a long history there. But it's being supplemented very, very well through using Diane. And it's saved the city a tremendous amount of money.
What's that, Jim? Okay, from Corporation Council Town Clerk, which is 96, 97.
Okay. All right. If I may, I'm going to give a quick overview and then open it up to Lori. The amended budget is $386,000, and the proposed budget is at $341. A rather significant drop, in part because of a reduction in, this is another typographical adjustment that needs to be made. In part because of a reduction in staffing, which should be 7, not 6. Lori had an open position for a period of time there that is being vacated and no longer funded. Should be 6.
Should be 6, not 7.
Should be 6. For budget 9 to 10, and that's your clerk typist.
No, that's assistant town clerk.
I'm sorry, your assistant town clerk should be 1, not 2. Thank you. The overtime is, across the city, the overtime has been reduced, and this department is unfortunately no exception. Part-time, Lori has done a tremendous job in reducing her needs for a part-time. Small changes right down the line and pretty much every line item. And the biggest reduction is in regular salaries.
Lori, do you have anything to add? Any questions? I'm sorry, any questions? Okay, thank you.
The raise, yes. Same schedule as under the city code. Yes.
Permit coordination. Who's ahead of that, by the way?
Where is he?
We don't know. We never
Yeah, I had to go to my turn.
That seems to be finished.
Okay. Shawan is basically keeping his budget flat from year to year. And, keep in mind when I say that keeping the budgets flat, that may not sound like much, but within that, every department is absorbing increases that are contractually obligated to give the union. So they're sucking up those increases, which mean cuts in other line items. All right. So he's not only, and this goes for all the departments that we've been talking about for these many nights. He's taking $1,000 hit on the bottom line. That's other lines have been reduced as well, all right? And, various lines, you can see overtime, part-time, the same old players, training and conferences, all being reduced, all right? Supplies. Any questions?
Sean, you have anything to add?
No.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, please, John?
All right, and,
To the planning department.
you know what? It's the same story as Sean's department. I don't know what else to add to Dennis's department that I didn't just say for Sean's department. Except that you notice legal and public notices. That's one thing that I know Dennis is very concerned about because he's one of the biggest players in that. And so I'm going to see if you have any questions.
Dennis? Anything? Any comment?
Do I have anything? No.
John?
One question through the chair to Mr. Elpern. Professional services, 5311. The expenditure about $4,000+ Chat a little bit, but like an explanation, if you could. That didn't exist before.
Professional services? Oh, yes, it can.
Line 5311, it was zero funded expenditures as of 09, and projected expenditures is zero, but this year there's $4,095 there as proposed. Just wondering what that's for.
Well, as far as projected expenditures, we will have an expenditure of at least $2,000 for this fiscal year. We have a contract with Sewell. Sewell is a company that updates our zoning maps. We do that once a year. We try to bundle them and send it off to them, so we usually wait until the spring. That will be coming short. And the other expenditure that I put in to calculate is for a transcribist. We are hit with a lot of lawsuits, and when they come, we have to prepare what's called a return of record. Return of record is a big, fat, boring book about that thing, which includes, among other things, all the data, all the reports that have come in regarding public hearings and applications and maps and all that kind of stuff. And it also includes a requirement by the courts for verbatim transcripts of all public hearings for that item. The public hearings may have 3 or 4 public hearings over, spread out over a period of 2 months. And those public hearings can run anywhere from an hour to 2 hours, sometimes longer. And it's just very time consuming to put all that together. And so we have been able to handle most of that in-house. It's laborious, it's time consuming, but they can do it. But there are times when we get hit with several suits at the same time. And then it's a bit overwhelming. So we do put that money in there. I have a proposal in there for 2 weeks for a transcribist at $35 an hour, which is the going rate. And in hopes that, we hope that we never even need it. But if we do, we have to use it. The courts sometimes are nice and generous, and they will postpone hearings, but sometimes not. And in those cases come about, you have to get outside help. Otherwise, you forfeit.
Thank you. That was a very illuminating.
Very exciting topic.
Mr. O'Connor.
Yeah, through the chair, Mr. Perry. There was some talk about, of course, we know that our permit fees are way down, but there was some talk about charging for some other permits. Do you think there'd be much of an impact with that? The fire department wanted to charge more.
Talking to me or
Mr. Harry. regarding the fire department wanted to charge for some inspections or whatever. I guess apparently now it's a free. Do you think there would be an impact with that at all?
As far as
you get much money out of that? I mean, I don't think it's going to fly, but do you think there's much of an impact with that?
actually, none at all now.
Not at all.
It would have an impact, and all it would do is be able to, justify more of our time outside doing inspections for different items and different jobs based on intensity. So it would have an effect.
I mean, how much do you think? Just like an absolute ballpark figure. I know it's hard for you to say, but what would you say it would be?
Tough based on the economy, but you can say anywhere from 100 to 120,000.
That much?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. To David, how many leased equipment, 5330? I think it is. Now, it's only 1,000. Now, according to the narrative, it's supposed to be for a copy machine. Is that enough for a copy machine?
It is if he's sharing it with another department. We're going to prorate it and share it with another department, and that's going to be the
Building.
Thank you, the building department. That was there were 2 copiers down there, and both of them were underutilized, and one was coming off a lease. So basically, between the 2 departments now, and I think the total copies per month on that lease that's down there now is about 10,000 copies. So between the 2 departments, it's still more than sufficient. So that's what we decided to do with that.
Can that same philosophy be used for other departments to share?
That's what we're doing. Matter of fact, that's what the whole Lori's gone. In our department, we took our, Lori had a lease that was coming up, and we shifted our copier down to Lori's department, town clerk. Did the same thing.
Okay. He said for our copy of the council.
Oh, your copier, I'm sorry.
For the council copy too, because we have one and we only use it for a sparing amount of time of the month. Can that be shared with other departments as well?
That's it. We would take a look at the volume. That's a pretty high volume, even though
She said 6,000.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on how many copies that's signed up for, and I don't know exactly how much that is, because that's not on the Icon contract. That's on a different contract. So I'll take a look at that. But we did talk about if G was here, she would tell you this. As far as supplementing, scanning some of the historical records, and of course that registers copies as well, part of it, and that would end up helping that process and saving money there. So that's in our thought process. So.
Okay. Any other questions, Ms. Connie?
Thank you, through the chair. For one of the major objectives for the 2009-2010, they want we're still going to continue the White Street streetscape improvements. Is this funding already allocated?
No.
And the reason why I asked that is because I'm just going to put it out there. The reason why I asked that is because everybody's cutting back, and I'm maybe through the chair to the mayor. I mean, isn't that something that we can put on hold right now? I mean, we've done a lot. And wouldn't it be a good idea to so it isn't?
It's not funded.
It's not funded this year. Thank you.
Unless we need some kind of stimulus money for it to do.
May I answer?
Yeah.
The issue here is timing, when my budget's due versus when the capital budget goes through. And that's why that's showing there.
Okay.
It's just a matter of
I
time.
mean, it's a nice idea, but sometimes you just have to. I'd like to put a new swimming pool in, but I can't.
You can use the one at the high school, Connie.
Use the one at the high school.
I would have to get a permit for that.
It's on the 6th floor.
It's not that this isn't under time.
Yeah.
If
No,
you
I know it
notice,
is.
we have.
I know. It's been
we
beautiful.
have- Yes, and the idea is to eventually extend it all the way to Main Street.
But it's on hold right now?
If with the committee's permission, I'll just say it should be funding to that. Just to clarify.
Any other questions? to the Office of Economic Development. On the floor tonight.
Now, as you all know, there's a big change in this department. There's a full-time person in there. That's Wayne. He's here right now. And that position has been changed to a part-time position. And there is a budgetary change in there. You may not see that as much, right, looking at the amended budget compared to next year's proposed budget. But, the original budget compared to next year's is rather significant because there was once a full-time salary compared to the part-time salary. Is a rather big change. But given that, there are other changes that occur. Most notably in the office equipment line was knocked out. Originally, there was a planned kiosk. And that's been backburnered, and cuts right along the line for many different items here. Travel mileage has been cut back. Still have funding in there for the Nutmeg Games, for $25,000, and this is second year, so that's a planned funding amount. And that's it.
Question. Mr. Stein.
Through the chair to the mayor. Mr. Mayor, you had talked about merging and possibly using the Office of Economic Development, which is really sort of an extension of the mayor's office, for lack of a better explanation, and having Mr. Shepherd sort of act in that capacity as well as your administrative aide. Is that going to have any impact, and it's not a big bottom line here, but in reducing or impacting this at all one way or another on the budget as proposed?
That's the direction we're moving in, where Wayne would sort of do the oversight, but the day-to-day touches and entree for the city would be done by a part-time person, possibly 20, 25 hours a week with no benefits. They would sort of be the face of that initial touch, and then they would elevate up to Wayne, who then brings it to me. And as I think I've said a couple of times, it always ends up in my office anyways at a certain point. So we funded it that way, but I also believe we basically funded it that way, and on a plan of between 20 and 25 hours a week. Frankly, we've had we have collected a couple of estimates, but we haven't put that on the front burner yet until we get through the budget and the budget adopted, so I understand what kind of resources we're going to have to draw from. So, but we hope to have that person on board by September 1 at the latest.
So the plan going forward, basically, through the chairs to basically have Wayne and yourself really be the sort of the leads on economic development.
Right. And, well, Wayne already manages some key projects like the Nutmeg Games, the Connecticut Film Festival, some of those other things that have been moderately to very successful depending on the project. So he's going to handle those, but we still have a need for somebody to do some outreach. We'd like to stay in very close contact with the business community. We organize these mayoral forums with our CEOs about every 6 months to kind of go over the plans of the city, listen to gripes, and manage that. We really need somebody to handle all those events, plus do that, be sort of that initial visit to a prospective customer, a company, we see them as customers, and then also work on retention. And that's part of that position. Is, are you happy? Do you want to stay here? Is there anything we can do to make sure that you don't leave? That kind of stuff. So that's really where we see the fit for us. And if Wayne can handle those projects, transferring some of, as we talked about before, some of what used to be Mike McLaughlin's old duties over to Ted, we think we can get it done with and save in a half a position. And the benefits is really the big saver there, the health insurance, pension liability. So that's the plan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sagi. Any other questions? Okay, let's move over to Danbury Conservation Commission, please. 106, 107.
Folks, not a lot of change here. It's pretty static. Any questions?
Nothing here, folks? Fair end. which is, was it 113?
Basically, the only change here is our lines that haven't been used in years. So cut those out. They're reduced from 1,400 to 1,200.
Question. Danbury Lake Authority.
Ten % reduction.
Now, that's also, Mr. Chairman, that's also consistent with New Milford and Brookfield. If 3 of the 5 towns agree on either holding their dues or reducing them, then that's what the rate will be. But you may hear some squawking from the Canada Lake Authority. But, if you look at their history, they've trended up, just about every year, outpacing the rate of inflation, pretty significantly. So, I worked with Mayor Murphy up in New Milford as well as First Selectman of Brookfield to come in at that.
Mr. Attell.
This is not specifically about the CLA, but it has some connection to it. Now that the courts have ruled that, well, to tighten this up a little bit, we're going to be entering into a new phase where our normal zoning applications and planning applications are going through a different process. Are we anticipating extra costs for this once that eventually gets underway?
Not really. It's always been our view in Danbury that our zoning regulations apply below the 440 gallon line. So for us, it's not going to be any change in practice. But
there's going to be a liaison now with the owners of the lake, and there's some extra, it looks like, bureaucracy and that kind of thing. So
they've been saying, their message to us is, look, we don't want to get involved with zoning. And
okay.
Now, that was not the case with the previous owner. So there's been a change there in their policy. So they just threw up their hands at the last meeting and said, you guys manage it.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Any others? Okay, to public library. 183, 184.
All right. Public library is dropping probably about $125,000. And I got to tell you, Mark put in probably one of the tightest budgets right out of the gate. And a big part of the savings comes right out of the salaries line. He's taking a drop of 2 in his head count. Okay. And there's been some reallocation of funds throughout several lines, and you'll see that throughout. But the big part is right in the salary line. Okay. Just a little bit here and there. I think outside services was another 16,000, and a bunch of smaller items.
Okay. Paul.
Yeah, big cuts in acquisitions, Mark. Where are we going with that?
Well, fortunately, unfortunately, in order to meet the 5% cut that was required of each city manager, we had to cut some materials. The fortunate part is that the library board has agreed to take up those cuts for next year's budget in hopes that it won't be a continuing situation.
Out of Farioli, something like that?
Well, no, the Farioli is a separate account. The library board received a bequest of $1 million 4 or 5 years ago, and that's what they'll be using.
Thanks.
Any others? Okay, let's move to Long Ridge Library, 186. I'm sorry, John.
Well, somewhat related to the budget is the issue of the days of operation. If I may, to the chair, to the director, and to the mayor and the finance director, what's the plan going forward? And there's been some discussion of a little bit of a distinction between the library and the rest of the city because of the types of services it provides.
Well, in the agreement that was approved this afternoon for DMEA, the library members of DMEA will have a choice between a 4-day or a 5-day work week. through this next agreement, which goes through Labor Day. What that means for us is that we will reopen on Fridays, the Friday after Memorial Day, which I think is the 29th. So during the summer, we'll be open again for 6 days a week, and our hope and plan is that after Labor Day, we'll be back to 7 days a week.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll go back over to Long Ridge Library.
Long Ridge? Long Ridge, with our 10% cut, they also took 10% cuts. 6,000 down to 5,400.
Questions?
Okay.
Let's skip over to the airport, make it go last. Did you see the panic on his face, folks? 205.
It's not much more. There's one after that. That's a quick one.
I had to throw a shot at my friend.
Well, Paul took a pretty big hit too, from this amended budget, and through various lines. He took about a $44,000 reduction, and through maintenance, road construction maintenance, which was kind of it was kind of a one-shotter this past year, but that's not to say that road or construction maintenance isn't an ongoing thing. It's just that there was a need, and I'm going to let Paul expand a little bit more on that. Last year that we funded, during this year's budget, and so that's why you see that kind of blip. But when you look at the 630.08 budget and or actuals, and you compare it to what's being proposed in the 09-10 budget, we're about on par, maybe a tad less. Okay. And it's, there's a lot of needs over there, and he's holding the line. That's the bottom line. Paul's holding the line. Okay.
I got a quick one for you, Paul. At the top of the page here, I'm reading a little narrative here, and it says you're responsible for the snow plowing and cutting grass. Who does that?
We have 2 employees that work at the airport.
Are you?
They're in the budget, been in the budget
Okay, thank you, sir.
all along.
I mean, it's important to note too that there's sticking with our departments are really working together to try to find ways to save money, but you're not going to necessarily see that jump right out at you. Over Public Works, specifically the Highway Department, and Paul have worked together to store some of the salt and sand over there during the winter time, and the trucks, so that they don't have to haul all the way over to the garage. It saves a lot of time, and time is money, as we all know. So it turns into overtime. So these guys can get to what they need to do, and that is plow the roads, drop some sand, make the roads safer. And that's made it for a much more efficient operation, and that's those kind of things we're seeing across a lot of departments, and we just saw in the meeting before us. It's not just going to cross within the city departments, but we're looking at ways to do that with the school as well.
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. Estefan. Mr. Estefan, I know that this year you bought a crack filling machine. Before you were owning this machine, you used to contract out for that service?
About $40,000 a year. And that was for about a half to about 6 hours of work, and they're gone. And I look at it and I go, this is stupid.
So you purchased a machine this year?
I was able to purchase the machine with the assistance of David, and I justified it to him. We bought the machine for about $38,000. We bought $2,000 worth of supply. Towards the end of the month, we're going to have training on it. But also, when we're done with the machine, it's not going to sit there. It's going over to Dookie Hart. So we're gonna train his people as well to run this machine. So when I'm done, Duke, it's ready. Come get it. I mean, that helps to keep the cost down. The other thing is that thanks to the mayor and the council, once you lift that burden of the trees off of me, I'm now back into the flow of federal dollars. So this year we were able to keep about $30,000 out of the budget for painting of new stripes at the airport is required under the federal regulation. And I'm putting them in a federal grant. It's going to cost us a fraction of the dollars. Fraction. We don't have to do all the setup work, pay for all the people coming in. I mean, just getting that back into the flow of federal dollars has been great.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly.
Through the chair to Paul. Are we done with all that, with all this FAA nonsense about trees and approaches and this and that? Are we through? Are we finished? Are we done? Or there's going to be, is there more stuff on the horizon that we're going to have to deal with, litigate, and everything else?
You know, we're playing catch-up ball. I don't know, if it'll ever end. As electronics becomes more and more the norm, I can tell you that in my readings over time, the FAA and the DOD, Department of Defense, and all these other alphabet groups, they've all signed off on federal legislation for satellite-based navigation. So all the equipment that's sitting on the airport and all these leases that you've had, eventually in time, maybe in the next decade, will be gone. And we'll all be satellite-based. So what does that mean? In a nutshell, that means that not only does the satellite have to be 100%, so does the ground contour. In my experience of flying in bad weather, there's nothing worse than looking for the ground on nasty nights coming into this airport. And if you got an object out there, you know pretty much where it is the base pilot. That's one thing. If you go to other airports like I have throughout the country, you turn around and think, I came from here. Yeah, that's where we're headed. And will we have to do more? Maybe. Maybe not. But they're the ones running this ship, not me.
Thanks.
Anything else? Okay, folks, last one, Hart.
Well, we're one of many in this group, and it's pretty much our allocation. We went up a little bit from last year, from 691 to 711. And even though they do provide a very good service to the Danbury community, for our seniors and people with disabilities, and it is something we heard about in a couple of our Ad-Hoc meetings, that there's a growing need out there, and this is just one way that we address that need. And as they say, it may not be enough, but it is certainly something that obviously you're all committed to, and it's a very important thing.
Yes, Mr. Sari.
Through the chair, to the Director of Finance, so this funding maintains the current level of service?
Yes.
Any further questions? Mr. Sexton.
As the city's director of civil preparedness, I just want everyone to know that when you see a HART bus at a scene, they're there free of charge. Well, when this building burned down here, an incident, the fire, they come in with the bus at our request. They provide a place of cover for the victims, and then they provide the transportation down to the shelter. They provide a place for the firemen to go into to be triaged in the event they have to be triaged. They provide a place for the elderly. When it gets 100 degrees out, we park them outside of the elderly locations, the Ives Manor, wherever. But they don't charge us for it. They're free. They pay for the driver, the bus, and the diesel fuel, and their maintenance. So I just wanted the committee to know that.
Too, just before you turn here and do all the stuff. No, Paul, just to reinforce what you just said, last year at the high school when they had that bomb threat, and we all had to vacate, we had to go down way the heck away from school, and it was hot. It was real hot, and some of the teachers and some of the faculty, staff members were having trouble. In came the hard bus with the air conditioning. And so I commend that. Okay, are there any questions on any matters dealing with this committee? All right.
I just want to be clear before, I'd like to make a motion if I could, but I just want to be clear on my motion for the raises. The raises that were approved last year for 3.5%, my motion should split that to 1.75 for December 1st and 1.75 for May 1st of 2009 and 2010. And then I'm going to make a motion to add a 3% raise for 2010, effective July 1st, being split 1.5% July 1st and 1.5% January 1st, 2011.
Okay, you're on, good.
Thank you. This time I'd like to make a motion to recommend to the council that we approve the proposed mayor's budget with the raise for the city clerk and the town clerk are 3% to be split into 1.5% increments. The first increment to be applied July 1st, 2010 of 1.5%, and the second 1.5% to be applied January 1st, 2011, and to take the raise that was approved last year for that office and split it into two increments of 1.75 each to be effective December 1st, 2009 and May 1st, 2010.
Motion's been made. Motion's been made and second. Is there any discussion within the committee? Okay, seeing no discussion, will clear your minds. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Dave, did you have a comment? No, he...
No, it's the whole budget. But
I will specify there are number one.
it's not the whole budget.
The last time you did say that.
Okay, seeing no further business before this committee, I'll let you know. Second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.